Welcome to the Sensory Empower podcast. I'm Bethany, your host. I'm a holistic occupational therapist with over a decade of experience in supporting individuals helping to transform their world through sensory empowerment. This podcast is your guide to the transformative world of sensory storytelling, holistic tools, and empowerment strategies. So excited to talk a little bit more about neuroplasticity, which means brain change. So, what are the things that we can do to help with neuroplasticity? Well, I have dug into some fun research and came across some cool things written by Dr. Chris Lee. And it really is talking a lot about like the stress brain, our ability to use novelty, our ability to kind of break out of patterns. How do we step into discomfort in slight moments for neuroplasticity? And so I think some of those things that were really highlighted as some very interesting quotes. Neuroplasticity requires frustration. So we need to have an agitation. There needs to be some sort of shifting in the status quo. We've got to break through those fear patterns and being able to shift. And so sometimes when we're doing different things that feel very uncomfortable, it might feel overwhelming. It might be very exhausting, but those are the pivotal moments from a nervous system brain level where we have neuroplasticity. We have change that occurs. We can learn new skills. We can build in a different way of doing something. We can build in a different way of how we respond to certain things without that rote, maybe more impulsive or reflexive way of responding to circumstances in our world. This can be social emotional, how we're engaging in relationships, how we're conversing, or even how we're responding to things in our environment and how they pop up. Is how can we kind of talk about the power of neuroplasticity? How can we just get a little bit into the discomfort? And so some other things that I thought were really intriguing quotes is just that doing something different in general can feel uncomfortable for our systems. I think as humans, we can go into rote patterns, we can go into routines, we can build in habits. And it, I think, is the reflection of what sort of habit we have. What sort of habit is built in? Is this a habit that is one that is supportive for our growth? Or is it something that possibly is keeping us in that status quo? How do we kind of shift just slightly the status quo to have a little bit of that brain train, that brain change, the shifting, the agitation, right? The agitation of the status quo was kind of like a spicy way of describing it. And I actually kind of loved it because there's a lot of times where rigid thinking can kick in and keep us kind of stuck in the way we do things. And that can be really hard for growth. Got to have a little bit of shift. And in the shift, there is moments of discomfort. I remember vividly moments where I was actively needing to shift patterns in my body. And a lot of the charged nervous system, those kind of rote charged responses to different situations in my life, it was something that was out of my control, tried to have some control over it, realized, you know what, I'm not able to control the situation. And almost like a complacency kind of kicked in. And that would be the dissociation. That would be the dorsal vagal, right? Our back of our neck dorsal response of I'm just going to shut down because it is so much easier to just remain kind of detached than try to actively engage and make some change. So how did I recruit neuroplasticity into my brain? So much discomfort. in a way where I'm like deeply grateful that I pushed myself into those moments of discomfort. So I did a lot of different somatic work, worked with a somatic therapist and did a lot of somatic release, a lot of kind of inner child healing and moving through kind of body scan style, noticing the sensations that had shifted. Talk about uncomfortable. Because there's moments where my system would flip immediately into heart is racing. I was in sympathetic. Uh, these traumas that were held in my body were coming out. Talk about uncomfortable to relive some of those moments, but also a like, wow, I've let it all go. Not all, of course. I'm still actively working through releasing things that have been stuck in my body. But there was a shift. And it was an uncomfortable process to feel the lightness. But I just want to encourage you, if you are feeling as though things can feel stuck or stuck in patterns that maybe might require a little bit of change, that this deep resilience can come through from within you. I think some tools that have really helped support growing resilience are I am affirmation statements, setting intentions, having even like to do lists of the tools that I was going to practice that day, building in new habits, building in new routines, and practicing and continuing to kind of problem solve. Okay, I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. I'm maybe moving into that sympathetic nervous system. How do I shift back into a state of being able to pause and then respond? So, the pause and then respond is something that I've been coaching clients for many years now of how do we facilitate just a hang on, buddy. I'm feeling uncomfortable, pausing, tapping in, having a mindful moment, doing a check in, and then a response. So, facilitating increasing the pause, that in itself can be terribly uncomfortable. Can be really hard to sit in that, like, okay, my heart is racing and my voice just wants to scream and I want to shout or I want to go into shutdown mode of that nervous system response. And it may continue to do as it needs to for that feeling of self-preservation and protection. So know that all of this growth and all of this awareness is helping to facilitate growth. All of this is a very natural process as we start to push that boundary of status quo and comfort into facilitating neuroplasticity and brain change. So I think some things to kind of keep in mind is thinking about freeze zone and kind of shutdown mode. And if there are things where you can just tap into a slight body scan. So just noticing the tightness, noticing the tension, and maybe just kind of bring the attention to the awareness of the shift. And then maybe just like ask a question like, do I need to get a drink of water? Do I need to walk? Do I need to? And you might notice an answer come through within your body. It might give a really clear sign of something that your system might really need to be able to release. And the more you listen, the more change can occur. And the more you listen, the more self compassion that can grow. And I'm a firm believer in being able to have these powerful shifting moments to be able to just give ourselves some grace, give ourselves some compassion, increasing our thresholds, being able to engage with things with a little bit more intrigue. And yeah, I just invite you to consider the topic of neuroplasticity as something of maybe fascination and curiosity, and how can we move into just a little bit of those discomfort moments, slightly uncomfortable moments, by using grounding tools to help our body feel regulated as we filter more into maybe an uncharted territory of discomfort. Are there certain patterns that you maybe are already practicing in your life that might be not of your best interest? Are there certain things that you might wish to change? Can you write them down on a sticky note, piece of paper? Even just visualizing some of those things that can help bring awareness to how we're feeling, and then what might we get to do through grounded action steps and starting to really work on vagal toning and feeling more calm as we move into those moments of discomfort, and know that all of this can be very powerful in helping to create lasting change in the brain. So it's really, really fascinating stuff. Um, and I hope that this has been maybe a resourceful tool for you to just consider opportunities to think about how we move through the world, how we process information, how it might be responding in our nervous system, and maybe how others are as well. I always love to highlight the idea of compassion towards others, towards ourselves, being able to have these beautiful moments where we get to practice opportunities for reflection. And I notice that I'm uncomfortable, and I notice that it's going to create some change. But what are the things that we can start to build in to help us feel in that lovely ventral, nice toned vagal toning of our front part of our vagal nerve from this polyvagal theory perspective? How can we move through feeling more comfortable, more secure, more grounded, more regulated? And it's just such a beautiful opportunity to pause and consider just the curiosities. So I hope that this has been a supportive idea, going a little bit more into neuroplasticity, a little bit into some neuroscience, but wrapping it all up with curiosity and compassion. Thank you for joining me on this sensory adventure through Sensory Empower the podcast. Remember, empowerment begins with awakening your senses. Subscribe now and embark on a journey of self-discovery and transformation. Until next time, may your senses guide you towards a life filled with peace, joy, and empowerment, because true empowerment begins with embracing your senses.